All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today, we're going to be looking at something kind of interesting and different.
Definitely.
We always like to come at you with,
Yeah.
specific tips for English learning. But
Right.
today, we're really going to be focusing on mindset and
Yeah.
sort of the mental game
Right.
of language learning.
Yeah.
So our source material today is an excerpt that we found online called "What's the Biggest Mistake English Learners Make?"
Ooh, that's a good one.
It is a really, really attention-grabbing title, and I think it's going to be exciting to unpack this with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. And it's something that I think we can all relate to, right? Like we've all been there trying to learn something new and feeling like we're hitting a wall.
Oh, absolutely.
So to kind of dive right in, what does the source actually say is the biggest mistake?
Well, that's the thing. The source, it poses this question that's very intriguing,
Yeah.
gets you really hooked.
Uh-huh.
But it doesn't actually explicitly lay out what the biggest mistake is.
Oh, right.
It's more like setting the stage to look at all these different things.
See, so it's like a bit of a cliffhanger.
It is a total cliffhanger.
Okay, but
I think that's okay.
All right.
Because we can still use this as a springboard
Yeah.
to discuss some really common mistakes that English learners make.
For sure. For sure.
And more importantly, the mindset shifts that can help overcome them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's maybe start with
let's dive into some of those common.
some of those common pitfalls that learners often encounter.
So one thing that I see a lot is, and I'm sure you've probably experienced this too, is getting too caught up in the grammar rules.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Right. Like spending hours memorizing verb tenses and all this stuff, but then, freezing up when you actually try to have a conversation.
Totally. Or like I would just end up speaking in these like really short, choppy sentences.
Yes.
Because I was so afraid of like messing up the grammar.
Exactly. And I think that's a really good point because it highlights the difference between, knowing about the language and actually using the language.
Right.
Right. And so another common mistake I see is neglecting pronunciation.
Yeah.
Like focusing so much on reading and writing that you forget to actually practice speaking and listening.
Yeah. Or, you learn these words, but then when you try to say them out loud, it's like they come out completely different.
Totally. And then, that can lead to misunderstandings and just feeling a bit discouraged.
Yeah. And then I think that kind of ties into another big one, which is like the fear of making mistakes.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like this fear of sounding silly or being judged that just kind of paralyzes you.
Yeah, and that's so understandable, right?
Yeah.
Because putting yourself out there in a new language, it can feel really vulnerable.
It's super vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's like you're putting your whole self out there.
It's not just the words. It's like you're presenting yourself to the world in this new way.
Exactly. And so I think all of these things that we've talked about so far, they kind of point to a bigger issue, which is the lack of real life practice. You can study all the textbooks and do all the exercises you want, but if you're not actually using the language in real life situations,
right,
it's not going to stick.
It's like you're learning to swim outside of the water.
Exactly.
You can read all the books about swimming, you can watch all the videos.
Yeah.
But until you get in the pool, it's not going to...
You're not going to learn to swim.
You're not going to learn. Exactly. So it sounds like what you're saying is that mindset is
huge. Yeah.
Really crucial here.
Absolutely.
It's not just about the mechanics of the language,
right,
but about how we approach the whole learning process.
Exactly. And I think you touched on this earlier, but it's this idea of like a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Yeah. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So a fixed mindset is basically the belief that your abilities are set in stone.
Okay.
So, you might think, oh, I'm just not good at languages or I'm too old to learn.
Right. Like I'm not a natural.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that kind of thinking can really hold you back because it prevents you from even trying. On the other hand, a growth mindset is the belief that your abilities can be developed through effort and learning.
So it's like believing that your brain is a muscle that can get stronger.
Exactly.
The more you use it.
And so when you have a growth mindset, you're more likely to embrace challenges.
Yeah.
You're more resilient when you face setbacks, and you're just generally more motivated to keep learning.
And that makes a lot of sense, right? Because if you believe that you can improve, then you're more likely to put in the time and effort to actually do it.
And I think that's where the importance of consistent practice comes in. Right. Because it's not about, being perfect or speaking fluently overnight.
Yeah.
It's about showing up every day.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for a few minutes and making a little bit of progress.
Like building that habit.
Exactly.
Right.
And celebrating those small wins along the way.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. Like, what are some practical tips that people can use to kind of cultivate this growth mindset?
Yeah, so one thing I always recommend is to really immerse yourself in the language as much as possible.
Okay.
So, listen to English music, watch English movies and TV shows,
Yeah.
read English books and articles.
Right.
And the key here is to find things that you actually enjoy.
Yeah, it should feel like a chore.
Exactly. It should be something that you're excited to do.
Right.
And then another really important tip is to find opportunities for interactive practice.
Okay, so so this could be talking to people.
Yeah, like joining a conversation group, finding a language partner,
Yeah.
taking an online course, anything where you're actually using the language to communicate.
And I think that's where, like, the fear of making mistakes can really come in.
Yeah,
It's like you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my gosh, what if I say something wrong?
absolutely. And that's a really valid fear.
Yeah.
But I think the important thing to remember is that everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah. Even native speakers.
Exactly. Even native speakers make mistakes all the time.
Right.
And it's not about being perfect.
Yeah.
It's about being able to communicate.
Right, like getting your message across,
Exactly.
even if it's not grammatically perfect.
Yeah, and I think one thing that can help with that is to really shift your focus from, trying to sound like a native speaker
Yeah.
to just trying to express yourself clearly and authentically.
So it's more about the connection.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about connecting with the other person.
And I think something that's really helped me with that is remembering that, like, most people are really patient and understand. They are.
When they know that you're learning a new language.
Yeah. For the most part, people are really supportive.
Yeah. And they're more interested in what you have to say
Exactly.
than in
Yeah.
how perfectly you say it.
Absolutely.
And that's really encouraging.
Yeah.
So I think we've talked about a lot of really great stuff today.
Yeah.
But if you could leave our listeners with just one key takeaway,
Yeah.
what would it be?
I would say it's to really pay attention to your self-talk.
Okay.
What are those little voices in your head saying?
Yeah.
Are they encouraging you or are they holding you back?
Right.
And if you find that you have a lot of negative self-talk, try to challenge those thoughts
Okay.
and replace them with more positive and empowering ones.
So it's like being your own cheerleader.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that.
Because, learning a new language, it's a journey.
Yeah.
It's not a destination. There's always
Right.
going to be more to learn. And it's okay to make mistakes along the way.
Yeah. And I think that's a really great point to end on because it's like,
Yeah.
it's about the journey.
Yeah.
It's not about
It's not about perfection.
being perfect.
Yeah.
It's about enjoying the process.
Exactly.
So keep exploring, keep practicing,
Yes.
and most importantly, keep believing in yourself.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.